Hey there clan, and welcome to Worth It or Not Reviews, where in today's installment I'm going to be reviewing the episodic game by W.I.O.N Entertainment, Life is Strange. Now, firstly, of course, I should reiterate that this will be a spoiler-free review, and it's going to be kind of hard. This is probably going to be a relatively short review, due to the fact that I can't really talk about Life is Strange without doing major spoilers. I will do a video later on talking about the spoilers. I may have a guest on, I'm not too sure, I need to work out a few things. But I will do my best to avoid spoilers as best as I possibly can. Now, firstly, of course, if you're unfamiliar with Life is Strange and W.I.O.N, W.I.O.N is a developer who made another game, if memory serves me. It's called Remember Me. I never played it. This is actually my first game, I think, of theirs I have ever played. It is published by Square Enix, who, a little interesting story about this game is, Square Enix were the only publisher that was going to publish this game with a female protagonist. Every other publisher that W.I.O.N went to wanted them to change the gender of the protagonist. That's a little interesting fact. But without further ado, let's dive into this review and talk about the different aspects of the game. Now, firstly, of course, I have to state that this, like every other episodic game, is a point-and-click adventure and is heavily focused on story. This is a heavy story-focused game, and that's the type of game I love. I love those type of games, so I'm a little biased on that aspect. The story of Life is Strange follows the character of Max, who has returned to her hometown of Arcadia Bay after a number of years being in another, I can't remember where she was, but she's in another part of the United States, and she's come to Blackwell to study photography because that is her passion. She is a very talented photographer, even though she doesn't think that about herself, and she comes to Blackwell, to study under Mark Jefferson, a very well-renowned famous photographer, and the fact that Blackwell has one of the best photography institutions in the country, apparently. And she comes back here, and there are some demons in there. Her demons that she addresses is the fact that her best friend from her youth lost her father in a car accident, and she kind of just left not that long after it, or her family and that left, and she hasn't seen and talked to her best friend, in years. And the story focuses on her as she tries to she actually stumbles into her best friend from her youth, Chloe, almost dying actually by the hands of a very, very basically a guy whose parents own the fucking town. He shoots her, kills her, and Max discovers that she has the ability to rewind time, only for a few seconds at first. But that gives her enough time to actually save her friend, who she doesn't recognise at that point, and that is where the story is, and she ends up reconnecting with her friend, and they end up trying to help solve the disappearance of a girl called Rachel Amber, who disappeared not long before Max arrived. Chloe and Rachel were very close friends, and possibly more than that from the way that she describes it. And the whole plot of this is to find out what happened to Rachel Amber, and also figure out what is happening to Max due to the fact that she has had a vision of a massive tornado coming to destroy Arcadia Bay in 1 week's time. So the story of Life is Strange focuses on a bit of a murder mystery, a bit of a supernatural element to it. And that's all I can really say without spoiling it, but I'm going to say this right now. You can actually buy each individual episode of Life is Strange separately. You can buy episode 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I bought episode 1. That's what I decided. I bought episode 1, and I fell in love with the story. I instantly bought the season pass as soon as I was done with that episode. I went, I'm done, I want to know what happens. I went to the Steam and I bought the rest of the freaking game. That's how good the story was in episode 1 alone, in my opinion. And I absolutely love the story in this game. I also love the characters. Now, I will admit the dialogue is a bit cringy at some points, and it's got a bit of cheese to it, but it's the right amount of cheese for me personally, and I ended up investing quite a lot into the characters, especially the main two characters of the story, Max and Chloe. I invested a lot of time into those characters. I actually really connected with both of them, Chloe especially. We've all been a Chloe at one point where we felt alone, and that's something that is very impactful on Chloe, that she does actually feel like nobody cares about her, that she is alone, that she's in this herself. And Max has to try and change that about her, which I definitely like that. So I definitely related a bit to Chloe. I also related a little bit to Max with her character, but every character in the game has their own unique feel, their own unique style to them, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's very well written, very well voice acted. The voice acting in this game, I will admit, episode 1 was a bit of an iffy thing, I'll happily admit that, but as the episodes went on, the voice acting got better and better and better until the final episode, in which case it was pretty damn near flawless, if you ask me. The characters in this game are absolutely phenomenal, and they are the major driving force of the game and why I kept playing it and why I really wanted to find out what happened at the end. And I don't want to spoil that for anyone, but if you're definitely into heavily story-driven games and character-driven games, Life is Strange is definitely something I'd highly recommend you pick up, even if you just buy the first episode and see if it's to your liking. It's so fairly cheap. But then, of course, I have to move on to the other aspects of the game as well. That is the graphics and, of course, the design slash artwork, and, of course, the music. Now, of course, I'll have to admit, the graphics in the game are not that great, I'll happily admit. They are definitely point and clicky like. The characters look a little plasticky to me personally, but at the same time it also suits to the style, especially with the theme of photography, which is throughout the entire 5 episode. It's definitely concentrating on the theme of photography, so I definitely think it was a chosen stylistic one. They do look a little plasticky, but overall they're not too distracting. I think they're okay. The only thing that may be a little bit distracting is the lip syncing. There is some issues with the lip syncing from time to time. It's not horrible, but it does might take you out of the situation every now and then. Now, of course, I also have to talk about the music. The music uses third-party music, a lot of indie band music, and the music in overall actually suits the atmosphere very well. There are certain songs that definitely are standouts in that, but I definitely enjoyed the music. It definitely suited the theme of the game, in my opinion. I do recommend at least listening to the soundtrack at least once or twice. Now, you notice I'm not spending too much time on the other aspects of it, because the other aspects of the game are there. They're okay at best. This is, the music's okay, the graphics are just okay, the lip syncing is a bit of an issue, the style is definitely a photography style. You notice I'm not spending too much time on it because that's not what the main focus of this game is. The main focus of this game is the story and the characters. I've already gushed enough about that, and I can't actually talk too much about the story or the characters without spoiling it for anyone, and I don't want to do that for people. I don't want to deprive you of the chance that if you haven't checked out Life is Strange to miss out on any of the story. Now, as I say, some people might be talking about, oh, it's an episodic game, is it anything like Telltale? It definitely has a Telltale feel to it, but I definitely think Don't Nod have actually done it a little bit better than Telltale. I actually think that Don't Nod took the episodic formula and actually mixed it and done it right. I definitely enjoyed the story a lot, and I definitely enjoyed the fact that this actually suited a episodic feel. I actually felt like something should be an episodic thing. I actually felt it worked really, really well. And of course, the good thing about Don't Nod is they actually kept to their schedule. Every episode of Life is Strange came out this year in a timely manner. Normally a 2 or 3 month gap between each one, unlike Telltale, who was anywhere between 2 and a year. You know the one I'm talking about. But yeah, I definitely think that Don't Know did an excellent job with this game. I absolutely loved it, and I definitely think this is a game that I think everyone should at least try the first episode of. If you have a chance, definitely check out the first episode. I believe it's available on all major platforms. I will leave a link in the description to the Steam page where I got it. It's not a graphically intensive game. I do think my computer could run it, and my computer's a bit of a beast in some instances, but I would at least recommend that you check out this game, and in my opinion, Life is Strange is worth it. It is worth picking up. It is, in my opinion, one of the best episodic games to come out, and recently, in my opinion, I definitely think it's actually better than some of Telltale's works. Now, I'm not saying all of them, like The Walking Dead, Wolf Among Us, those are definitely the top tier for episodic adventure games. Those are my 2 top favourites, but Life is Strange is definitely up there with those ones. I absolutely love the story, I love the characters, and I definitely say that I was hooked. I was hooked on the story, and I was highly anticipating the ending of Life is Strange with episode 5. I don't think I've been that hyped for a game in a long time, especially an episodic game, which normally I'm not too excited about. Like the last episodic game I played before this was Game of Thrones, and I haven't even finished like the 3rd episode or 4th episode that I just stopped playing it because I just didn't want to play it anymore. Life is Strange, I couldn't wait for the next episode. I wanted it. I kept waiting. I waited anticipatingly. I played it the day it was out every single time. I absolutely loved it. I love Life is Strange. I love that Don't Know were able to bring this, and I have to thank them for that. It is an exceptional story, and one I think anyone, if you're a gamer, should at least check out the first episode, which you can get for like £5, I believe it is. At least check out the first episode if you haven't already, and if it's not to your liking, you don't need to buy the rest of the season pass. That is one thing I absolutely love about the method that they've done this. You can buy each episode individually instead of just buying the season pass like that. That's how I think episodic games should be done in the future, and from now and in the future. They should sell each episode individually, so you can buy the first episode, see if it's to your liking. If it is to your liking, buy the season pass. That's what I did with Life is Strange, and that's the way I think it should be done for every episodic game in the future. every episode should be sold individually, or you can buy basically the full season in one shot. That's something I kind of wish Telltale had done with Game of Thrones, because now I've bought the entire season, I'm not going to play the rest of it. But Life is Strange did it perfectly, and I definitely think it is a good example of how to do an episodic game. I love the story, I love the characters, I loved everything about this, and that says something, and I will even admit it here. I cried at this game. I cried at this game more than once. And that says something. It takes a lot for me to cry in any means of fiction. I don't cry at movies. I very rarely cry in movies. I very rarely cry in graphic novels. I very rarely cry in books. I very rarely cry in games. In fact, this year, there's only been 3 games that have made me cry. Dragon Age, Witcher 3, and Life is Strange. Those 3 games are the only games to make me cry and openly weep. That should say something. So I do hold Life is Strange in the same bracket as those other 2, because those mean a lot. Those 3 games are probably my 3 games of the year, if I'm going to be honest, just for the fact that it was such an investment and joy to play all of them, and the fact that the story in all 3 of those games is excellent. Now, I will admit, Life is Strange is nowhere near Witcher level 3 level when it comes to story, but it is a good story, and one I highly recommend that you play if you haven't already, and at least give it a chance. If you haven't checked out Life is Strange, I highly recommend it. It's available on PS4, I believe, on PC and Xbox One, I believe. Go and check it out if you haven't already. I highly recommend it. I cannot recommend this game enough to people. If you have not checked out Life is Strange, go and at least try the first episode. Buy the first episode. It's relatively cheap. It's the price of a freaking, I think, a Starbucks coffee, in all honesty, at £5. For like 2 Starbucks coffees, you can play this game, basically. I highly recommend it. You at least give this game a chance and show your support for Don't Nod. And I guarantee that if you like story-driven games, if you like episodic games, that you will like Life is Strange. I highly recommend it. I cannot recommend it high enough. And I think that's where I'll wrap things up without getting into too many spoilers, and I'm dying to talk about spoilers in all honesty, but I don't want to risk spoiling it for anyone. So if you haven't checked out Life is Strange, I highly recommend it. Other than that, I want to give a big thank you to Don't Nod and to Square Enix for bringing us Life is Strange. In my opinion, one of the best episodic games ever. Other than that, I thank you for watching. As always, I'm Scottish Warren 92, and Life is Strange is worth it.